Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm well-ish now, but yesterday I had a really violent 24-hour bug.
Oh, me too. I had it last Friday and
Did
Saturday.
you?
Yeah.
Grim, isn't it?
Mine was longer than 24 hours. You're going to tell me your story first or me mine?
Well, you tell me yours then.
Yeah, well, I'm going to talk about diarrhea and vomiting. So sorry.
Nice.
But about 2:30 last Friday afternoon until 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, I felt, and then I became very ill indeed. I stayed in bed all day on Saturday and I had to go out for essential supplies at dusk. You know, when you're a little bit sweaty and and weird, aren't you, after something like that? On Friday morning, I drank the woo-woo tea that Crystal Annie had recommended, and I wondered if it was that, but actually, I know it's not now. But I had lots of interesting emails with her that day and my introducer, and neither of them had experienced that. So they offered to do various, remote healings for me, and I was so ill, I gratefully accepted. I wanted my mum to come, really, and do what mums do when you're poorly, send you to the bathroom while they clean and tidy everything and put new sheets on your bed. And it was a very long time before I felt well enough to do that for myself. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure my mum ever did that or whether I hallucinated it. But on Sunday lunchtime, when I was downstairs in a bit of a sweaty state, still in the same rank nightie and a bit wobbly, my other next door neighbours came to introduce themselves to me, Heather and Roger. They were dressed up like they were on their way back from church, no word of a lie. And the doorbell rang and I was beyond caring who was there or what they thought about me and the way I looked. But they kept out of infection's reach. But they were so sweet, they took my bins out for me because they could see I wasn't anywhere close to being able to take my own bins out. And they lent me a bin bag because one of the great mysteries of my current life, Nicola, is where do people keep their bin bags?
Well, under the sink, isn't it?
No, well, they're not there. They're never there. Oh, right. They're never in any of the normal places. I'm going to keep going. On Sunday then, when I was still poorly, the same day that Heather caught me in my sweaty nightie, and after a correspondence with my hosting company and your sister Sarah, they did something to the servers which took out all my emails. So on Sunday, had no emails. Didn't really matter, to be honest, because I was so poorly. I was past caring about that as well. But it did mean that the ones that were sent to me during the outage were lost forever, which always makes me a bit anxious, actually. And on Monday morning, I managed to get to my desk. I may even have had clothes on, and the wonderful Eric sorted it out for me. Outlook still isn't working nicely with my Surface Pro, so I'm using webmail, but I just gave him access to the back end and let him get on with it, really. And then my cousin died. So I had a near-death experience myself. My email stopped working. And the first, honestly, without a lie, the first email that came in at just after 10 o'clock on Monday morning told me that my cousin had died.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry.
That's my week. That's my week, Nicola. I'm laughing, but only because it's Thursday.
I know.
I've made it to Thursday.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because no matter what is wrong with you, a little bug comes along. And what I want to know is, Judith, how can a little bug have come along and got me? Because I didn't see anyone. I saw people on Friday night and I saw people on Saturday night. I felt absolutely fit as a flea Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning. Went off to record the podcast episodes. By 11 o'clock yesterday morning, I honestly thought I was going to die.
I know.
And it's such a weird sensation, isn't it?
I know. Did you have any vomiting?
Yes.
I'll tell you what's interesting about that, because during the first part of mine, I thought, well, I don't think I'm actually going to be sick.
No, I thought.
And then you get to the point where you think, oh, I am going to be sick.
And the worst thing was, I had just grabbed a bucket because.
Me too. But then when you're actually sick, your healing begins instantly.
Yes. See, I was wondering if it was a food bug or something, if I'd eaten something I shouldn't have done.
Well, I wondered that too. The Americans call it stomach flu. I think, in my case, completely different from yours, but similar, actually. Having moved into a new house where the couple who live here have bugs of their own that they're immune to, something that they live with my system didn't know, and now my system is immune to it because I've been through that.
Yeah, well, honestly, it was so embarrassing because here we all have the doors and windows open.
I know.
And I had to actually text the neighbours and say, I'm so sorry about this.
Look, darling, when you're poorly, there is no dignity and nobody cares.
I know.
I didn't care. I didn't care. I didn't care when Heather saw me. I didn't care.
They pretended not to have heard anything, so I was very, very polite.
Yeah.
So I shut all the doors and windows and sat down with my bucket again. And it didn't happen again. But
no,
I lay there, honestly, thinking, I feel so ill.
I know.
I just want it to stop.
I know, me too. What I've always noticed, it didn't happen this time, but when I've had like the food poisoning version of that, my mental madness gets to the place where you're so ill, you think, oh, I'm going to die now. And your next thought is good, because it's so painful, you just want it to end. I didn't have that this time, but I noticed the thing about the vomiting, which is as soon as it's out of your body, immediately the chills stop and you start to feel better. It's literally instantaneous. It's like magic.
Yeah. Until the next time.
No, well, I didn't have bouts, and neither did you, of the vomiting. You just had it once, you said.
I did. I mean, then, right, to top it all, about 9 o'clock, the power went out.
Yeah, so, there you go. We've had the same week, haven't we?
Take myself to bed then.
Yeah, we've had the same week.
Yeah. And I'm actually sitting here, and my ribs are hurting. I know. It's not good, is it?
Well, the good news is I'm 3 days ahead of you, actually, and there is life after this. It's good.
Oh, good. But, I just don't understand who I could have caught it from, because I didn't see anyone.
No. You went to Right Club, I thought you said. Podcast.
No, but that was in the morning. And I was already feeling a little bit. I mean, I was feeling fine.
Oh, I think mine took quite a long gestation period, possibly as much as 24 hours, actually.
Yeah. Must have been. Anyway, so here we are, and I honestly, I'm not joking. It took me about an hour to write my prep for this show, because
I understand. And I couldn't have done this last weekend. I would have had to reschedule you. You've been very brave.
We've got an expression in our family that just sums it up. It's weak as a kitten.
I've used the same expression this week. Weak as a kitten. I'm not even aware that kittens are very weak, but you do feel weak. It takes it out of you, doesn't it?
Thing as well when they wobble about.
Yeah. I've just wandered about the house in a rank nightie going, quite a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
And not caring,
And not caring, exactly. But I have fulfilled all my obligations. That's the main thing. And I rediscovered, as you'll hear later, the joys of lying on a sofa with a blankie.
Yes.
Because I'm not one for lying on sofas.
No. Well, you might not remember, but last week when I left you, I was looking forward to 4 days off to unpack my bags. Well, I just used those for being sick. And all my stuff is still in bags in the living room and in the boot of my car.
Oh, dear.
Not strong enough for that yet.
Oh, dear. It doesn't. And luckily, I had lots of people texting me to say, if you're all right, let me know if you need anything. So the community is strong here. Everybody is willing to help. It's nice.
Yeah. Well, and here we have Amazon that can bike things round later, so that's fine. Yeah.
Bike things round.
Well, you know what I mean? That's what we used to say in the olden days. Can you bike it over? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. We used to have our own account with a bike company.
Yeah, quite. That's right. That was how things got around London, wasn't it?
I know. I remember one of Irving's birthdays particularly. I biked him 8 items at one an hour.
Exactly right.
Including an entire camembert.
Oh, I've done something similar to that. Those are the days when we were in love, Nicola.
Yeah, I know. In love and reckless with our money.
Yes.
I didn't enjoy the camembert.
Yeah. I'm not sure the men on the receiving end of a parcel every hour or an enormous box full of things ever really appreciated it in the way that we enjoyed putting it together for them.
No, it kept interrupting his meetings. It was
quite. It was a bit embarrassing probably for him, yeah.
Height of Jive Bunny days, and he had plenty of meetings going on in those days.
Yes.
So there we go. Moving on. What's fueled your fire then, if anything at all?
Yes, actually, because I'm 3 days ahead of you, so I've had a chance to think about things like this. The Big U's got a marvellous sense of humour, and I've been talking to you for a couple of weeks now about thinking about taking a sabbatical in 2019. And then you remember last week I said, and then I'd had these 2 SEO leads, which were hot on the tail of 2 other SEO leads. Yeah. And then on the first and second, I had a rash of book sales and people appearing in my diary. It's like Big U's heard me saying, I'm thinking of having some time off. And now it's stuffing my diary with intro sessions and book sales. And people who I've never heard of who do interesting things. And since I'm doing almost nothing right now to promote my business except the podcast or my weekly newsletter, this is very strange and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, meeting new people. I love meeting new people. And there's this funny thing that goes on, and it's my fault, clearly, when they buy a book at Sells, which is 1 out of 3 don't mean to buy the digital one. And if I'm not quick of sending them an email to say, did you mind to buy the digital one? Sells swipes unlike when you make a refund on PayPal refunds you their commission. Sales doesn't do that. So unless I'm very quick, there isn't enough money to refund them that they've actually paid me, which is a bit of a failure in the system, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I need to revisit the page and make it clear. I think it's back to the point most people don't read. But 2 out of 3 said, yes, I did mean to buy the digital. Thanks very much. And there's always one that says, no, I didn't. I want a real book. Can you send me my money back? And then I can't send them their money back, so I have to send it to their husband's brother's auntie who's got a PayPal account. It's all quite yeah. There you go. Anyway.
Infuriating.
But so book sales and strangers in my diary.
Yeah, very nice.
What about you?
Well, I've been trying to keep myself occupied because yesterday I was so ill I just lay there. But today I'm feeling much better in myself, as they say.
Yes, indeed.
I think they must be in my brain because that's where I feel better. My body feels like it's been run over by a truck, but the rest of the time. So I was listening to something today where somebody asked. And the other thing is this week, Phoebe's coming out of her stupor, which is where she's just like been having fun through the summer. She's getting to the point now where she's starting to think, what am I going to do with my life? And she actually put a little picture on Instagram stories where she'd actually Googled, what do you do when you don't know what to do? And I went and Googled the same question because I wanted to see what kind of advice she'd see.
Yes.
She doesn't want to talk to me about it too much because I'm too gung-ho and give her too many ideas and overwhelm.
Yes.
But so there was quite a lot of good stuff from sites like Life Hacks.
Yes.
And there was quite a lot of good advice for her, so I feel quite confident that she hit a good seam of advice there. But I was thinking about it really, about how do you decide and what do you look for in a career? And I think the main things I've tried to get over to her is that you have to do meaningful work. Your work has to feel meaningful to you, and it also you're happier when you've got a measure of control over how you spend your days. So I said to her,
you are.
No, everybody, lots of people, most people, actually. If you look at if you Google what makes people happy in their jobs, those two things are the things that come up.
Control.
Yeah.
I think control's a very unhealthy thing.
No, you're misunderstanding. It's having a sense of control over how you spend your minute by minute, hour by hour time at your job.
So you haven't got a boss breathing down your neck, you mean?
Yeah,
and second guessing you and monitoring you and not letting you go to the toilet and things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So having a sense that you can do good work and you don't need people looking over your shoulder, and that what the work you do has got some sort of meaning. You can see the end goal.
Yeah, so you're not just packing boxes in Amazon.
Yeah, exactly.
How old is Phoebe?
23.
Yes, tell her when you speak to her next that, some of my clients are in their 50s and still asking themselves that question.
Yeah.
And also, it isn't a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You don't make that decision at 23 and then never have to think about it ever again. I've made it dozens of times because it changes, doesn't it?
I said to her, it's like a series of stepping stones across a Zen garden or a pond or something.
Yeah.
You have to make the first step, and then when you make the first step, you've got 2 others to choose from, and then you've got
Yes, that thing we always used to say about you don't wait for all the lights to be green before you leave home.
Yeah.
Now, what were you saying at the beginning before you switched to the Phoebe thing? You said you were listening to something as though you'd been inspired by something.
Oh yes, I was just listening to one of James's trainings. He does trainings once a month, and basically it's a thing that he's put together as a he's really good, actually, very clever. He makes trainings for his students, and then he's often writing a book at the same time. So his next book is he's working on it, and so he's working through chapters to see what gets the most response and what gets people going. So he maps out the chapters, and then he does a training on it and then he puts the training into his membership site, and he sees which ones provoke questions and answers and that people respond to and get the most out of. So it's a really good way to write a book. And he asked several questions which I thought might be good to share here. Why do you do what you do? What is your point? What do you know you next need to do? And if you ask yourself about that, your business, I thought that's quite good. Why does your business do what it does? What is your business's point? What do you know you next need to do in your business? And I just thought, that's interesting. I'll share that on the podcast.
Almost 3 blog posts.
Yes, absolutely, yes. And then it made me think about Phoebe. And also Chloe, actually, because Chloe has she's just been gently let go from her job that she wasn't enjoying anyway.
Okay.
And so she's on the job hunt as well. So she wants to work with animals, and she knows that, which is one step closer than Phoebe is, because Phoebe doesn't know what she wants to do yet.
And how has all of this fueled your fire, advising the Phoebe and Chloe?
Because it's given me stuff to talk about on I'm starting my vzine again, but I haven't been able to get myself going because I haven't been able to think of what I want to talk about. So it's giving me things to talk about.
I see.
Yeah.
And when you said James, you meant Shramko, I guess.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Okay. Now, I do have a focus of the week. You may not be well enough for it, interestingly.
I'm sure I will be.
But I think if you were firing all cylinders, I think you would like it very much. And I haven't forewarned you, so here we go. You ready?
No, I did wonder about that.
Well, we're on the 200 series, so it's my turn again, isn't it?
Okay,
So,
yeah.
You don't do what I always used to do, which is send a message on Tuesday saying, what are we going to talk about? You're prepared for me to throw it at you live on Thursday. Well, here we go.
I love it when you throw it at me. I
know. Here we go. How can you prepare for your financial future / security as a self-employed person? Now, let me read you my notes, if I may. I've got a bullet point list here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sure you'll think of a few more. I've written savings, ? Investments, ? Pensions, ? Recurring revenue, passive income, build and sell your business. And then I've put, I think most of us have to do things outside of our self-employment because most of the people that we know who are self-employed, ourselves included mostly, are exchanging time for money. And when we stop doing that, the income stops. And we have to somehow anticipate the future, which I think you'll agree is, I've written here almost impossible, but let's call it impossible. Even with my newly burgeoning, clairsentience and spookiness, I can't, and neither can Warren Buffett predict the future.
No.
It's also somewhat against the grain for an entrepreneur to be prepared for all eventualities and play safe because we're risk takers by nature. Now, I know half of our audience will be shuddering because they aren't such loony risk takers as thee and me, but it is somewhat against the nature of the beast to be prepared for all eventualities, even if that were possible. And then I've put, because I have had these discussions with various...
Sorry, can I just ask you to read them again?
What, savings, investments, pensions.
Pensions.
I want to come back and discuss all of these individually in a minute. Recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Passive revenue.
Yeah, recurring passive, yeah.
And build and sell your business. And we might need to explain the difference on some of these because somebody said to me yesterday, what do you mean passive income?
Yeah.
Then I've put here, work till you drop because you love it. Yes, but. And then I've put retire, which I'm ready to do. And somebody said to me, won't you miss it? And the answer is, it rather depends on how satisfying it will be to do all the things I've never had time to do, like more reading, more writing, more focus on deliberate self-care to improve good health and longevity, more travel, more looking after my investments-ish, a small amount of philanthropy. I could be CEO of my own good works where I direct it, I don't do it. It's more about... Following on from last week where I said, a pensioner isn't a strange person, it's me. It's how can we, the self-employed listener, prepare for our financial future?
Yes. The thing that always pops into my head when I'm thinking about this is the phrase, I think comes from a book, the trick to money is having some.
Mm.
And I think that's where savings is it used to be such a dull word for me, but it's such an interesting word now.
Well, funny enough, last week you talked about, for the first time in the time I've known you, you talked about building reserves, not just of money, but of words for NaNoWriMo and something else and something else and something else. Yeah.
I must be my age.
I was going to say, I think it might be a stage of life thing. Absolutely. Yes. When we realise how the other way is quite hard work, it's like paddling all the time, isn't it?
Yes. But then that's how it's got to be, paddling all the time, because or one of these other things like recurring and passive income and building a business to sell, because I have no investments. That's not true. I've got some Bitcoin, and I have no pensions that I know about. Actually, that's not true either. I think I've got some little tiddly ones, but in 20 years' time, they might be worth something because I haven't paid into them for many years because I've been very busy building a business. I'm starting to have savings now, which is a nice feeling. I'm really guilty of putting everything back into my business. I'm really guilty of if I've got.
I remember when I worked with you and tried to persuade you to stop doing that, if you remember.
Yeah, well, I tell you what did stop me in the end was a really good book called Profit First by Michael McCall.
Oh, yes.
Yes. He basically made me realise that I'm doing myself and my business a massive disservice by keep doing that.
But we'd read a lot of books before then about, the first 10% goes into savings and you live off the 90%, or you do all your budgeting off the 90%.
Yeah, well, it's all very well, Judith, if you have enough money to do that. But if you're still trying to get your business off the ground and you haven't found your offer that converts and you haven't found a way to scale it up past your...
But as we both know, that can take decades.
I know, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I think we could all live on less. than we do.
Well, that's when things changed for me, when I started, when I came out here and started living on less, because I think it's very hard to live on less in the UK.
Oh, it definitely is. I agree.
You have to do something drastic.
But actually the 10% after a few months doesn't make it, you don't notice it. I've never done it myself, but I know it to be true.
What 10%? Yes.
Yes.
Well, what I'm doing now is he actually gives you how to set it out in a spreadsheet. So basically you have your business income less the variable expenses, and then that's the real income. And then out of that you put director's drawings, and that should be 25%. You put tax provision, which is 15%. And then you have, what's the other thing? Profit first, which should be 25%. So essentially he's saying your business should live on 50%, 65, 35% of, and nobody had spelled it out quite that clearly for me before. And he also says, obviously, you're not going to be able to do that immediately. Some businesses are in the happy position that they can, but most businesses aren't. So what you do is you start with a smaller proportion on each of those things, but you transfer it away from your business account, because all the time it's in your business account, you look at, you sort of think that it's there for spending or investing in things.
I don't think we can invest straight off the bat, because we have to save first in order to have the key money to go into an investment.
Yes. Yeah.
And pensions seem dull, especially for self-employed people, because if you remember Frank, the mortgage genius who died, his presentation was, when you're in a job and your employer is at least matching your pension contribution, you've got that double whammy working that makes the pension make sense. When you're self-employed, there's nobody matching the contribution you make, so actually it's meaningless. You might as well do something else, investments that outperform pensions.
Yes, and the interesting thing was, when I started at 19 and someone started working and someone came along and sold me a pension, I think we only paid into it for about a year and a half, but it turned into £28,000 last 2 years ago. But what I really was incensed was the government promptly took 8, even though I actually had paid into it from post-tax income. So that was a bit infuriating, but it just shows how it can grow over years, from 19 to 56 or whatever it was.
Except that if you think of that as a pension pot, which you want on the date you retire, which let's, for the sake of argument, call it 65, 28,000 isn't enough.
Oh no, it isn't.
It pays a tenner a month or something like that. But yes, if you start early enough, and if it's matched by your employer, I would agree. In my own case, trying to create a pension for myself, I had to go at property, and now that's heavily taxed as well. So you are, as a taxpayer in the UK, it is. The government don't encourage much. When I was first self-employed, there were all sorts of tax breaks to encourage you to save, invest, and make pension contributions, but they're not quite, well, it isn't, I was going to say they're not quite so friendly now. It's not friendly at all now. It's quite hostile, actually.
Why, I mean, on a macro level, why do the government not want you to provide? Because
they do, Nicola, they do. In theory, they do. If all else was equal, they do. I read another article this morning that said the world's economy hasn't improved since the credit crunch in 2008. There's ostensibly, the international powers that be want us to believe that austerity pertains, and that they have to find the money from somewhere to pay for things like the NHS and filling in the potholes. And you take it from the places where there appears to be money. So, for instance, in the olden days, in a rather moralistic way, the governments used to tax smoking and drinking because people always will find money for that. Now they tax car driving, and you go, well, fair enough, because it's destroying the planet. And, but what they do is it creeps and creeps and creeps to where people are either creating wealth or spending money, because there are fewer and fewer, it's harder and harder for them to balance the payments, ostensibly. I mean, I don't believe any of this, but I understand their arguments.
Okay, so rather than talking about that then, let's talk about what people can do.
Yes. I want to talk first of all about recurring revenue and then about passive income, because they're different. If we go to the recurring revenue model, which we both like, I see a snag with that as well. And we used to discuss this in the Money Gym. What will we do? Will we sell the business when we've got all of these recurring silver contributions, or what? Because when you've got recurring income, and that lovely book, The Automatic Customer, it seems very appealing. But actually, the lifespan of a recurring revenue model in this day and age is quite short. I tried to think of a recurring income model that was long. I guess you could say my AA membership is quite long because I've been paying it for the 40 years I've been driving and not claimed on it very often.
Wow, okay.
And a gym membership technically, but in the end people either cancel them or look for a cheaper one. What's a recurring revenue model that actually, what's the word when you last a long time, has longevity built in? Because in your example, that's not, it's short and medium term, because people change their minds all the time about what they want.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was so fascinated that when I offered an annual membership, people jumped at it rather than the monthly membership, because I think people want to lock themselves in to being able to, do nothing for 6 months and then come back, and that makes your recurring revenue model much better. I mean, I've just passed the 1 year point, and I've got about a 50% retention, which is really very high.
I think people who like it and want to stay are great, but the two built-in problems, if we're talking about your financial future and security at the stage of life I'm at, which is the best part of a decade older, it won't still exist by then, because mostly you're behind that.
Yes,
you're delivering it, you see.
Yeah, but I don't have to be the one delivering it. That's the thing about this, is actually...
Well, then it has to adapt to the times, is my point. It doesn't just have to adapt to the personnel. It has to... Is that what people will want in 2028? No.
I don't know. I mean,
they won't. Because all the things that we do have a much shorter lifespan, and it shortens all the time because people's attention span shortens exponentially.
I think if we were, each of us, people who were teaching one thing, we were one-trick ponies, like we know there are some other coaches out there who have programs that do not fit to the customer. But I think we've got a bit more longevity because we work with the customer where they are now and to where they want to be. And we're flexible enough to work within, that.
But the way we both operate it now, it's exchanging time for money.
But not much.
It's not a recurring revenue model. Neither of us operate a sustainable recurring revenue model. Think of gyms and the AA membership and razor blades being delivered in the post and whatever else we also subscribe to.
Oh, I see. So we have to turn up is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's good. So
what I'm saying the listener needs to consider there, if they're considering that model, and it is very attractive, is you've got to constantly refresh your offer. So, for instance, now the threat to the AA's model is the electric self-driving car. Probably the days are numbered when we need AA membership, and I don't have a gym membership anymore. Do you see what I'm saying?
Don't electric cars break down then?
Well, I think they probably break down in a different way. Certainly, the team of mechanics the AA have got don't know how to fix them, do they?
No, but the AA, if they've got any sense of...
Well, somebody else will come through and take over that.
Yeah.
I bet them. I mean, I think cars today are more reliable anyway. Let's go to passive income because that's slightly more interesting. My property portfolio creates passive income. Books, good one. Yes, what else?
Hang on. Property, though, people don't think of that as passive, but it is if you can...
Well, it is compared to going to work. My example is always this. Sometimes when it's a landlord, it's very uncomfortable. And the client yesterday was moaning at me. And I said to her, when I feel like you do, I always think to myself, compared to going to work on the tube 40 hours a week, this is quite easy. But managing tenants and agents and all that goes with that isn't fun. It's like pulling teeth, but you only have to do it little, not a lot.
Yeah, infrequently.
It's very painful. When it happens, it's painful. You've got expensive voids and you've got big bills. Need a boiler, 1,500 quid. It's frightening. But it isn't. It's not. This is what you were saying to Phoebe. It isn't actually meaningful work, although you can say it is meaningful. I was surprised by how meaningful it was to make a home for somebody who needed and wanted one.
Yeah,
and it is largely passive.
Yeah. And what I was thinking as you were talking there, the thing that takes a sting out of a property portfolio is having a big pot of cash. Savings again, contingency money, because then you don't, yes, okay, you might have a 3-month void and you might need a new boiler, but really those are just investments.
Well, again, I think if you keep aside the first 10% you make in there, brilliant.
Yeah, you're good, because that is the only thing that makes owning property difficult is when.
Well, except there's a point. There is a point here, which is I'm going to go all accountanty on you. Is that when your tax on your business or your profits is calculated, you're allowed to deduct in most businesses, in most countries in the world, not exclusively, because, for instance, in France, there are certain statuses of self-employment, and Italy, where you can't deduct, your expenses, which is very odd and makes me very cross when my clients are explaining that to me. But they've done that to landlords in the UK now, so mortgage interest isn't fully deductible. But in both examples of a business, we call it depreciation, and in property, we call it wear and tear, the government technically allows you to claim an allowance of about usually 10%, somewhere between 10 and 25 or 100, depending what the tax rules are in that year, which is a provision towards you having to replace boilers, as an example, or having to replace computers. So technically built into the tax system is a reserve for you to be able to replace those things. But both of them are eroded constantly for the reasons I've already explained. But again, I could easily in my property bank account save the first 10%, much more easily than I could in my business bank account.
Wow. And then, interestingly, when you say about building a business to sell, there's a really good book called Millionaire Fastlane, which is an eye-grabbing title, but it's actually a better book than it sounds. MJ DeMarco. He talks about this a lot, and he says actually the fastest way to build a big pot of cash, which you then invest in property, is to build a business to sell.
Well, I've done it 3 times in my life, and it's the way I've made the most money. But it's a very particular sort of business. I'm a firm of accountants, which didn't rely on me. A travel agent, which didn't rely on me. Franchising the cleaning business, which didn't rely on me. It's not the sort of business that you and me and our clients are involved in. One where it's in our own name, and we create income around our skills and talents. It's a kind of arm's length, unemotional involvement in a business often.
I have tried so hard to build a business like this on so many occasions, but I just cannot get interested. But
there are some nice tax breaks in this if you build a business across your 40 years of your working life and then sell it to retire. There are some nice tax breaks around that still.
Right. So if you're building something like an accountancy or a head.
Yeah, or anything. When my optician sold his business, or a vet. But actually, everybody that I know who sells a business does it because they're sick to death of it. So actually, it's not a seller's market when you do that. When you just want to get out, it's not a seller's market. But if you inherited, say, your family business and you built it up and then you sold it to pay for your retirement because your children had all gone off to do other things and didn't want it and weren't interested, that's a way of securing your financial future.
In a way, you're being rewarded for going to work in your own...
Well, it's your pension by another name, actually. It's a pension by another name because you can't really... But if you will probably be a limited company in that, so you would have the sort of employer type of pension as well.
Yes.
And I suppose the answer is that all of the listeners need to listen and think and have a little go at all of these in a small way.
Yes. Oh, definitely have a go at savings and investments and pensions and recurring...
Well, a book sale is a good example, isn't it? On the first and the second, when it kept going ka-ching, 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 it's like, oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Free money, I call it, because you did the work so long ago, you've forgotten the pain of it.
Yeah, I'm just getting quotes now for getting my business books re-edited and relaunched, because I know that they need editing and I know they need relaunching, and I think they could do a lot better than they have.
And then they need some marketing.
Yeah, well, exactly. But, I'm looking at paying someone to do that because I just find it so dull.
Yes.
Marketing my own stuff, my own books. I don't know why.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But, okay, so we're making it sound all quite difficult and hard and everything, aren't we?
Well, I don't think it's easy, but it's not impossible. And there are some nice books to read. And I'm doing a cash flow game in January. I'm full up, unfortunately. But it does the cash flow game like nothing else teaches you. And if you're in the UK and Google or America and Google where can I play a cash flow game, you'll never regret that because it teaches you all of these principles.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. And the books we've mentioned as well,
also the Rich Dad books.
Yeah, well, the Rich Dad books are fantastic. Rich Dad's Guide to Investment was one of my favourite because it was pretty dull for the first 2/3, but the last third was all about how to build a business to sell and what people who buy businesses look for, and so what you need to have in place. And it was actually a really good thing to read just about how to build a good business.
I think there's a couple of things that we haven't discussed yet. I think that depending on the stage of life you're at, and you're still vaguely in it, and so am I actually vaguely in it, but some of our clients and people I'm visualizing are much more in it than either of us, or certainly more than me, which is if you love what you do, you think you have the capacity to do it until you drop.
Yes.
And I always thought I would have the financial requirement to do it until I'd drop, because I didn't think the state pension would be very valuable to me. And good job I can keep doing it through the 6 years while they've cheated me of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you and I, particularly you, the old version of you, up until a year ago, with nothing you could think of you'd rather do in a minute off than go to work. And I think there are stages in our lives when we think that. However, the other side of that coin is, actually, the new client I was talking to yesterday and me, we were comparing we were saying we think we work full time. And I said, but I bet you don't. How many hours do you actually do? And we worked out that she's probably working 3 days a week. If you can work part time and have enough sort of quote unquote leisure time, which is the sort of things that people used to think they would do in their retirement when they stopped grafting, if you can integrate that throughout your life and always for as long as that suits you, then the retirement to create space thing is less important. I think the money thing is still important because you get more choices. But, if you've got an integrated self-employed life where you get plenty of life,
yes,
then the retirement aspect of this isn't important. And I'm only bringing it up because here I am, really should be retired by all intents and purposes, but can't afford to be because of various factors. But it is just normal for it to race up on you very quickly.
And there's nothing like being sick for 24 hours when you're lying there thinking,
oh, good point. Good point. It's turning the tap off, isn't it?
Yeah. Because
actually, you're so sick, you just go, I don't care.
Yeah. Which your clients don't want to hear, do they?
No, they don't. No. I think our focus, when life is difficult, and I think it has been for a decade or so, I think our focus is on how can I make it happy? How can I be grateful? How can it be all those things that you described to Phoebe, meaningful and all? And we do control what we do all day long. And those things are important. They're values. I suppose I'm coming at this from a, older than everybody else perspective, age 63, and I certainly won't be our oldest listener. What's everybody thinking about this? How is everybody just not knowing what to do, or is anybody doing anything? I suppose is my question.
Good to discuss in the
group. Yes, come and tell us what your thoughts are about. Are you? I know most people I work with can't. It's all about growing the income enough to have the sort of lifestyle they want. There's no mention of beyond that yet.
Yeah, that's right. And someone like Phoebe, I think she actually should go and get a job, because I think she'd really benefit from being around other creative people. And she's not going to get that at home on her own. Although, she's quite, good at getting up and doing things. She's not being stimulated.
I agree with you. Most people need other people.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They just do. Most people are not introverts.
And I don't think I don't know about 2018, but I don't regret the 3 or 4 years I was employed between 73 and 77, because I learned quite a lot of interesting things in that time.
Yeah. Well, you learn how things are done.
Exactly. How offices work, how teams work,
yes.
How bosses operate.
I sometimes think I could go and run things somewhere in a corporate world, and then what puts me off though is the thought of having to walk in there at 9 o'clock in the morning and not be allowed to leave till 6 o'clock or later.
Well, you could negotiate something else.
That's true.
And actually quite a lot of firms these days don't insist upon that. They have flexi time,
remote working and things.
Yes, exactly.
But then I think, oh no, I can't be bothered.
Well, no, I think yes. You are.
I sometimes think the intellectual challenge of it would be good.
I agree with you. And when I go to Heathrow Airport and I see, thousands and thousands and thousands of people filing past one operative with an NVQ, I think, oh, give me this airport to run.
I'm always just astonished when I come out of Greece and go to somewhere busy like that. All these people going all these different places.
I know.
Doing? It's like,
when I go to dinner at my brother's house, invariably there's a full range of silver-haired retired CEOs sitting around the table, all sexy men still, sexy, vital men who ran Cathay Pacific and banks and all sorts of things. And we have conversations about, look at the brain power in this room. Why don't we apply it to something that needs fixing, like, say, the NHS? And the answer is because it's too soul-destroying.
And it's just too big.
And it's not creative. And you don't have autonomy. You've got to do everything by committee. It would just finish you off.
Yeah, it would. Okay, so let's recap on this focus then.
Yeah, I tell you what I would like. I would like to suggest a takeaway would be, what little thing can you do that will grow? So I think your first 10% is a good idea, or even first 5%, because if it, or first 1%, which is the book, Pay Yourself First is the concept, isn't it? Yeah, there are gazillions of books on that topic. If you can't find one, we'll put them all in the group for you. But you've got to start with savings. You can't go directly into investments unless you hock your house, and I wouldn't recommend that in 2018.
Having some.
Yeah. Create a little pot. And I bet some people listening, I'm amazed by how many women in a marriage have bits salted away.
Well, yes, they have to be, don't they?
Absolutely. Yes. You and I don't have to. Maybe that's an interesting thing. I mean, and women have always done the budgeting typically. The factory worker handed over his pay pot and she did that thing that T. Harv Eker taught us, distributed it across the jars. Yes.
Yeah.
Little budgets, little pots, little biscuit tins for paying the lecky and the rent and the. Women are quite good domestic budgeters in my experience.
Okay, what's the word of the week then?
You go first.
Conversion. Because I've been thinking about this a lot this week because I'm working with 2 clients, as you know, and they're both at different stages. And one client is at the stage where I can drive traffic very cheaply to our website, but the first offer wasn't converting. The first free offer wasn't converting. And then I was racking my brains about what to try next. And Sarah said, why don't we try it? What I'd like is this. And so we changed the offer completely, and now she's getting a good percentage conversion to leads. So now my next job is to work out how to convert those leads to sales and what those people want. Because my client wants to offer them one thing and they don't seem to want that. So we've got to find something else that they want. Mm. Okay, what's your word?
Well, it's a word I hadn't really appreciated until this last week. That is actually in general use. Well, it's not in general use, that's the point. My word is scathed, which is scathed. Now, we say I was unscathed by the bug, or somebody was scathing, but we never say scathed, do we?
No, we don't. No.
Well, it is a word, and it was tabloid usage that turned me onto it this week. So when I'm meandering through the Daily Mail app, you sometimes see these links, and you follow a link, and then you end up on the Daily Express, and it says, so-and-so was scathed, and I'm thinking, I don't think the readers of the Daily Express appreciate usage of the word scathed. Even I had to look it up. Nobody uses the word scathed, do they? It's just madness.
No, it's very interesting.
But there was a lot of use of it. It was like scathed. So-and-so was scathed. X Factor was scathed because the sound didn't work properly. And it's like, what? Nobody says that. Nobody in the world of the X Factor uses the word scathed.
I was scathed by the sound not working properly.
You could tell me about that in a minute because I want to know what happened because I didn't see it. Shall we do project updates?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, illness and loss of will to live caused me to abandon NaNoWriMo because it just was a bridge too far in the middle of all of that. And I sense this is probably a good thing not to be overdoing it right now as I settle into my new home. I've still got those mad numbers going on both my Facebook and Twitter, and I wonder if, in fact, that's the answer to some of the strangers buying books and turning up in my diary.
Yeah, I hate to be sceptical, but I'm still not convinced that those are real. Because I don't see how...
Well, how can they be unreal? And have you ever heard of anybody else who's got unreal numbers in those places?
Well, the fact that you're starting to get more SEO...
Just because you haven't got it doesn't mean it's not real, okay?
No, listen, here's why I'm wondering about it. Because you haven't done anything to generate it.
No, that's not true.
Okay, what have you done then?
Well, I'm very active on my Facebook page, as you know. And when you went and had a look, you went, oh, yes, you are. And when I told you how many pieces I put on there, you went, oh, yes, you do. And on Twitter, I've got various things auto-posting, including, one with big audiences about my books and people writing to me saying, how are you doing that?
Okay.
Next. Tell me about your project update.
Well, I was doing very well with NaNoWriMo until yesterday.
Yeah, quite. It takes it out of you. You think, I couldn't possibly write 16 words, let alone 1,600.
No, now I've got two.
But you had a reserve, Nicola, so you're all right, aren't you?
No, because I used my reserve, Judith. I wasn't able to write that day.
Okay.
Are
you behind?
I am now. Yes, as of yesterday. Yes.
Oh, only one day.
Yes, but then there's today's writing as well. So it's 2 days I've got to write.
Well, don't you think you'll do today's? Don't you feel well enough to do today's?
No, not really, no.
I know, okay.
And then I've got these great long lists of things I want to do around the podcast. I want to read these posts about what people do to promote their podcasts, and because our podcast should be doing more, and they're not. And I need them to do. I need to find out how to help them along. But I just, again, it's something that goes to the back of the queue all the time. I do my work first, I do my clients' work first, and then I never have time to do that. So I hate having things on my list that I want to do and don't have time to do. So I'm going to try and work out how I can get someone else to do it.
Okay.
Because that would be the answer, isn't it? If you never get around to it, outsource it.
I think it's one of those jobs that when you get into it, you'll actually quite like it.
Yes, I will, but I've got
because it's in one of your geeky communities, isn't it? The man that got the 800%.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But God knows how. Anyway.
You go first on who or what inspired.
Well, okay, I know that you're reading it now, and I'm not sure if you've had time to finish it, so I'm not going to do any spoilers, obviously. But I've just raced through Past Tense by Lee Child, which is the new Jack Reacher novel, which you recommended. And you mentioned it, and I just absolutely loved it. And while I was reading it, I was trying to analyse what was so good about his writing that made it so tense and tight and really well formed. And I couldn't analyse it at all. It was just absolutely brilliant, though. I really enjoy his stuff. I think what I enjoy about it most is the descriptions of these backwoods towns that he always sets his novels in.
Yeah. Shall I tell you who or what's impressed me?
Sure then.
Lee Child's book, number 23. And I've written here, imagine you were a popular author. And I think this is relevant for you and Write Club. Imagine you were a popular author who'd hit on a formula that you loved writing and the audience loved reading, and you could take it all the way up to a book a year, which is much awaited. And as you know, because I've discussed this on the podcast before, I'm always in two minds about popular culture. And then I remember the man who taught me about wine tasting, and he said, however naff we think something is, and there are many people who would think that Lee Child was naff, partly because it's churned out, and partly because it's ferociously financially successful. I have the same snooty thoughts about Andrew Lloyd Webber. I don't want to sit in any of his musicals, thanks very much, and he's a plagiarist. But anyway, Lee Child, The Sound of Music, and Matthias Rosé. Nothing sells in large numbers and abides unless it's intrinsically of sound quality. I absolutely love that concept. So it can be popular, and it can even be quite lowbrow, but it must be good, whatever it is.
The writing's excellent.
Yeah, and even, or perhaps especially, when people like me are snobbish about it. Now, his books, the Jack Reacher book started in March 1997, and we're now talking in November 2018. That's 23 books in 21 years. Now, talking about recurring revenue, that is an awesome achievement. I admire I've written here, prolificity, which is basically being prolific. As long as the quality doesn't suffer, I'm not sure whether the last few haven't dropped a bit in standard, to be honest. But if you're still into something like this after all those years, which I am, and I would include something like Grey's Anatomy after 16 series, when other things don't engage me beyond 5 minutes, it isn't just loyalty. He's doing right, isn't he, this man?
He is. I feel that the plot could have been a bit more developed on this last.
Oh, I'm finding it quite slow going in the first half, I think.
I quite like the way he built that slow, but I was expecting him to really go at it. There's two threads running through it, isn't there?
Yeah, don't go anymore, because I'm still in the two threads, because last weekend I spent doing the same thing with John Grisham, which was all about dysentery in World War II, which wasn't good reading given what we were both going through.
But I read somewhere he's selling one book every 9 seconds.
I know. Well, going back to passive income and savings and things, what I like about these crime writers is not only, if you follow his page, going back to marketing your own books, he loves marketing his own books. He's doing a book signing in London this week. He does little cameo appearances in the Tom Cruise movies. He's totally engaged with not just writing it and creating it, but how much we all enjoy consuming it.
Yeah.
And I think that's essential if you're going to be a writer.
He's got 230,000 people liking his page.
Yeah, and he sends out little snippets halfway through. We can get the opening chapter, and it's all encouraging you to buy the next one. It's genius, but it doesn't stick in the craw. It's just authentic, loving what he does.
Yeah, it is. Good for him. But from a writing point of view, I was so impressed with how simple and direct. And
short sentences with no big words, are there?
Clean sentences.
Yeah, I agree. He's really good at his craft, as you'd expect after all that time. And of course, Jack Reacher's not the only series that he creates. I don't know what the other ones are, but there are other books. He's prolific.
We did a fun thing this week. We put I put 4 authors, extract 1,000 words of 4 authors into Hemingway to see how many adverbs and long sentences and difficult sentences and passive voice there were. And do you know who came out best?
In what sense of best? What's best?
As in best written, according to Hemingway.
No, tell me.
Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, well.
Kafka, Pride and Prejudice, what else did I do? Anne of Green Gables and Metamorphosis. Oh, sorry.
I can see in this house that I'm living in, where I've met the lady once, that she's a member of a book club, because behind me on the table where I'm sitting, there's a little stash of 4 books that's got a Kate Atkinson, who you like.
I do.
It's got a book I read about 40 years called The Group by Mary McCarthy. I've got a feeling you've read that fairly recently.
No.
There's a book by David Gutterson called Our Lady, and then there's a slightly sort of Penguin published chicklet in the middle, but it actually looks like the pile she probably was intending to take to Argentina but forgot. And the bottom one looks like a library book, so I'm thinking I might get an email saying, can you take Kate Atkinson back to the library? But what it shows is a woman who reads all different genres, which I think is a brilliant thing.
Yeah, it's a book club, definitely.
Yeah.
What's the Kate Atkinson?
It's called Started Early, Took My Dog.
I love that one.
Did you?
Well,
I might read it then.
Yeah, one of the better ones. Yeah,
I might read it before I take it back to the library.
That's funny. It's funny and dark.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay, that's us then.
It is. See you next week, when we'll both be better, she said, cosmically ordering.
Okay, bye.
See you then. Yeah, bye.
How do they do it? Not a care and suffering. Wanna step into their world.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitpodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.